Hi everyone, it's Marie at LivingFelt, and today we have a very fun project for you. We are going to wet felt an octopus. This is a super fun project designed by our friend, BFF, and super talented artist, Helen Russell. Helen came up with this fantastic project, one, because she loves octopuses, but two, she saw this in a vision when she was making our Wet Felted Heart Dangler. So you're gonna see some similarities, and she has made this project so easy. In this project, we are going to be wet felting over resist, but it really is quite simple. We'll start by wet felting the arms. So you're going to make 8 similar things, and that is a very easy step to do. Then we're going to create the bulb or the body of the octopus and join it with the arms. Once your octopus is completely felted, we'll block it to shape the bulb of the body and form the cute curls of the arms. And then finally, we'll give our octopus some eyes and seal off the area that we stuffed so that he is ready for display. All of Helen's octopuses, or octopos as she calls them, are made in fun colors. You can follow the supplies link down below and see our suggestion of wool and embellishment fibers to go along. For the fibers of this project, you'll want 2 ounces of fine 19.5 merino top. You can use one color. I'll be using white sand and slate. Some embellishment fibers will really give it character. We'll be working with 2 colors in viscose, some bamboo top, sari silk waist, and hankies. You can try any of our luster fibers for this project. Additionally, for texture, we'll be using neps. These are white and saffron. To wet felt your octopus, you're going to need basic wet felting supplies. Grab a few towels, a wetting device, this is our ball broth, a sponge is helpful, and our olive oil soap, along with room temperature water. I'm also suggesting a pair of sharp pointed scissors. Get your bubble wrap, 2 pieces of your thin plastic, your wet felting mesh, and resist, because we're going to be felting over a resist. Grab the diagrams in the PDF, and you are going to create a triangle shape that will help us make our octopus arms and resist for felting our little magical being. To give our octopus great character and shape, we're going to curl the legs around some dowels or old paintbrushes. You might want to grab some rubber bands for that. I'll be stuffing mine with quilt squares during the drying stage, and when we're ready to finish him off, we'll stuff him with polyfill. To give our octopus eyes and close off the area that we stuffed, grab your needle felting pad and a few felting needles. Wool color, we're using batting to go around the eye and match the bulb or the body, white for the eyes and black for the pupil. Helen is suggesting 2 colors for your octopus. We are going to use 1 color for the body with our embellishment fibers and 2 colors for the arms. You will use 0.5 to 0.6 of each color for the arms and a total of 0.5 to 0.6 for the bulb. This ½ ounce will be for the bulb, and then I have 2 ½ ounces that we'll use for the legs. It's helpful to divide all of your fiber in advance. This length, and then divide into 8, splitting each thickness in half. Repeat with the white. Now we have 8 pieces of 2 different colors for our arms. To make the arms of our octopus, place your triangle template underneath your bubble wrap. This will be our guide for laying out the fiber. This will allow the top of the arms to be wider than the bottom. Start by laying your fiber in thin, narrow strips by going parallel with the length of the triangle. Follow the outline of the triangle. Slightly overlap each tuft of fiber as you lay it down next to the other and as you begin the next row. It's okay if your layers are very thin and see-through because we're working with a tiny amount of fiber here. Do your cross layers also in thin bits, and it's okay if they don't make it all the way to the bottom. Each time you pull off, just make sure the fiber is flat so that you control that thin layout. It's okay if you see through the fiber to the template. This is a very thin layout. The very top of the arms are going to be underneath the bulb of the body, so I like to keep this area just a little more thin. Once your fibers are all laid out, roll it up into a long length as tightly as you can, but being gentle at the same time. Set this aside and repeat with all 8 arms in both colors. Before we start felting, if you find that any of your lengths of fiber or your prepped arms is bigger or longer than the other, now you can pair them all together before we start wet felting. I also have my embellishment fibers set out over here so that I can just pull from them as I decorate the arms. And we have our wet felting supplies, so you can go ahead and let your soap start soaking in the water. For these arms, Helen shows to twist the fibers together so that it's like a little bit of a swirl. And then I think you can have fun putting on the embellishment fibers in different ways. And play with different fibers to see what you like. So one way is to apply the fibers to the top of the legs and control a little bit more where they go, but I encourage overlaps for sure. You could try something like that and then spread your fibers out once they're on. That's one way to decorate an arm. Alternatively, you can also lay fibers out on your mat and try laying them out at a little bit of an angle. And then with your fibers on the mat, then just roll your arms over them so that they wrap around your arms. Once your arm pair is all queued up and decorated with your embellishment fibers, dry roll it on your bubble wrap for just a couple of minutes so that everything starts to integrate and feel round. It should hold straight when you hold it up after you've rolled it, so it should hang straight. To wet felt our legs, our goal is going to be to keep this very top little portion right here dry so that we can easily bind it to the bulb of the body. It's okay if it gets a little bit wet, but try and keep it dry. And we're gonna felt from here down as much as possible before we attach it to the body, because it's very difficult to felt the legs once they're attached to the body. So here we go. Use as little water as you can. As you start felting each arm, your pressure is going to be feather light and then gradually increasing. Too much pressure in the beginning will cause you to flatten or squash the arm, so go very, very gentle and just make sure that you can always roll it and it stays round. You'll gradually increase your pressure as you go, and if your bubble feels puddly, then take up the water with your sponge. You want this area up here to be felted as well, so you may be trying to stay away from it to keep this dry, but it needs to be really well felted before you put it on your octopus. So the key with each arm is going to be gradually felting until it is hard. On these little ends here that start to get very wispy and thin, right here, that's what your scissors are for. So just cut it off at an angle and then felt it. And just after you get it to about this stage, it's fine to cut it, or a little bit after. Increasing my pressure now. Notice that as you increase your pressure, that's when the water also comes out, so be willing to take it up because you really don't need it. Remember that the more water that's in a piece, the more space it is taking up, and if you remove it, that allows the fibers to get closer together. Throughout this tutorial, I tend to use the word arms and legs interchangeable, but I am told that these are arms of the octopus. Felting each arm may take 5 to 7 minutes. So take your time and have fun with this. Make all 8 arms. Here's a look at a few of our arms. We can see that our embellishment fibers are nicely integrated, and there's almost no rhyme or reason for how the two colors of merino top join together. On some of my arms, they look really straight, and some they look swirled, but all of them look fantastic, and the real sheen will come out when the project is dry. The tops are dry, and I like to leave just a little bit of fiber. This is what we're going to be putting under the bulb. So you can take off this embellishment fiber, or you can just leave it in place. Once all of your legs are felted, you might just go around and make sure that they all are of equal firmness, and then we can set them aside. It's time to get on to felting our octopus. For this next step, we are going to felt the arms to the bulb or the body. Lay down a sheet of your thin plastic, and our resist we're using in 2 parts. This is going to be for the main part, and this is just an assist to make sure all of your legs stay separated in the early stages. Divide your 1/2 ounce of fiber into 4 equal sections. Set 2 aside for the side A and 2 aside for side B. Because I like to control my fiber, I'll go ahead and divide it again. Now I have a thin, narrow strip that I can control. To begin layout, we are going to start with a vertical layer just on the resist. This part is going to be the neck of our little guy, and when we put the legs on, the dry part is going to be in that area, and the felted part just meets that edge of that part of the resist. With a basic layer down, we want the fibers just sticking over the edge to the other side because we're going to wrap them around. With that layer in place, put your arms onto the shape. Because I made my arms 2 different colors and I tended to favor the white on the inside, when I'm placing my arms onto the resist, I'm putting the gray out and the white side down against the resist. The tops of all of our arms are on this side of the resist. This is kind of the neck of the bulb, and they can stay here. It's okay if they, a little bit wraps around. We're going to be hugging everything around this resist, but the design of the project is that 4 will be placed on this side and 4 will be placed on the other side. With the legs on top here, I'm just going to put some joining fibers running parallel, so still in the up and down direction. Our embellishment fibers will be last. So now we'll do our horizontal layer. This layer should also stick off because all the fibers need to wrap around to the other side. I put 2 layers on this side. I still have this fiber left. We're going to layer up this side, flip it over, layer up the other side, and repeat. So don't worry if you still have fiber left. Put your mesh in place and it's time to wet out. Sandwich the project between your hands, grabbing all of the resist and flip it over in one motion. Gently peel back your plastic. If when you flip your piece over, it looks lopsided or like anything moved, you can just move your resist now so that everything is where you want it. Make it a little more centered. That's your last chance to do that. Wrap all of your trailing fibers around to this side and just take a moment to notice where it's thick and where it's thin. Like right here, my fibers didn't come around enough, so that's a great spot to make sure we patch in a little extra. Since we're doing both sides 2 times, there's plenty of opportunity to fix that. But if you have an area right there, you can patch it in now, and you can even wrap it around to the other side, just like that. Pull wool from the sack you set aside for side B. Repeat the same 2 layers as we did on side A. If one part of your project is going to have extra fiber, it can be this top area right here. The neck area is already going to have a lot of fiber from the arms that we put on, so it's okay to add any extra fibers along the top of the head or the bulb. Where you place your fibers over the arms, only place it in the dry area. There's no reason to put new dry fibers over an area that's already felted. It's less likely to bind if you do that. And it's okay if you do go a little bit further. Some areas that aren't quite bound we'll deal with later. Cover in plastic and flip your project back over to side A. Now we've encased both sides with fiber, and we're going to repeat the process. You want to pay attention here to the join where the arms meet the body, and we want to make sure we have enough fiber to fully encase those all in together. And also that these tops of the arms are wet, because remember they were dry when we laid them down. On the vertical layer, on the second time you're covering a side, I try and stay mostly on that side, and I'll wrap only the horizontal layer to the opposite side. It's because the edges already get kind of bulky. So we're just minimizing bulk along the edges. We've just laid 2 more layers on side A, and I still have fiber left. So it's up to you whether you put down another full layer, or you can also just fan it out along what is the top of the bulb. Now wet out and then repeat on side B. Sometimes when I want to make sure I don't add too much water, I'll use a sponge. You can use your plastic to guide the fibers back over onto the resist. We've covered each side in 2 layers, 2 times. But it's a good time to go around and feel. How do things feel? You know, is it bulkier on the edges? And this side to me feels like the middle, like maybe I put a little less fiber in the middle. And I imagine on this side, I felt that the second side before I flipped it and it felt pretty good. So for my very last thing here, I feel like I just need a little more fiber only in the middle, and then we're going to move on to our design. If you feel like any parts of your piece are thin, now's the time to fix that, because fixing holes should only happen in the layout. It's not going to happen after you felted the piece. With our wool layers in place, now it is time for our embellishment fibers to really bring everything all together. So just have fun at this stage and bring in the embellishment fibers you already used, and maybe some that you didn't use in the legs already. We'll be adding neps to ours and hankies. Those are the new fibers we'll be adding. When you do put down your embellishment fibers, trail them off the edge so that you don't end up having this obvious line around. So you always want your embellishment designs to kind of work their way to the other side, since we're going to be reshaping this guy in the felting and the stuffing part. Some people think neps are kind of tricksy because they don't really want to stick. My only real tip is don't make too big of clumps with them. So leave them a little bit sparse. But if you do make a big clump, it's okay. Just know that, some of them are going to fall off, and that's part of the fun of using neps, is some make it, some don't. Don't really worry about that. With the sari silk waist, it really is a tangled mess of delicious shiny goodness. If you can't wrangle it, then just cut it. That's the secret. Cut it so that it becomes what you want. And wherever this stuff is massed, you will get a really interesting sheen and texture. With the hankies can help trap down other things. They also can make some really interesting lines, and sometimes it might just seem like too much. So a hanky like the sari silk waist, it's totally okay to cut it. And what you'll find when you felt it is sometimes you'll appreciate these really thick lines within your design, and sometimes you're going to love the webby bits. But I also encourage you to try it by wetting it a little bit, because it just kind of helps it get a little more stringy and interesting. So stretch it out and let it go to the other side. You can use your mesh or your plastic at this stage. I almost always like just wetting out through mesh because I can feel how wet or dry everything is. Repeat the same as you did on side one. I just like to wait and maybe wrap these pieces over after I have a few textural elements on. They really act like nice, trapping helpers, if you will. And everything doesn't have to go vertical. You can just kerplunk some of your fibers down and see how you like them, maybe a little more willy-nilly rather than all in perfect striations. So have fun with that. Before you start rubbing, make sure all of your fibers are hugging into your shape, wrapped around to one side or the other. Everything should also be uniformly wet, and you'll be able to tell when you press on something. You should see, if you press on an area, you should be able to feel and notice the water disperse and come back. So feel that, and we're going to start felting our piece just by hand rubbing, and we're going to spend most of our time doing that. The top part of your plastic should be wet and soapy. It also helps if your hands are wet and soapy, and then they'll glide on the plastic nicely. This plastic is going to keep us from messing up our beautiful design. I like to start felting right here where everything joins, and we're going to be trying to get these fibers to join onto the arms first with gentle rubbing. We're not really applying pressure, but you can feel the piece between your hands. And we also want to keep these arms round, so we don't want to smash them down. We've spent all that time felting them. Now we want to keep them together, and we want to hand rub everything so that it hugs the resist. Spend at least 5 minutes per side, flip it over, repeat on the opposite side, and repeat. As you rub, you're going to rub all of the edges so that the fibers are hugging the resist. You can even put the plastic just a little bit underneath the shape so that everything is hugging tightly. So as you rub, think about rubbing to the center, to the center, to the center of the bulb, and always rubbing up and down the arms and the join where they meet the bulb or the body or the neck, whatever you want to call it. It's important not to be overly aggressive at this stage where you're felting these parts of fibers right here, because these legs are partially felted and this area is not. So we want to give these fibers time to migrate. So a gentle pressure here really is important to get this area to bind nicely. Right in here between the arms is an important area to felt. Don't worry if some of it doesn't bind completely. We can fix that later, but we do want to give it as much chance as possible to bind. Remember, we put dry fiber, from here to here. So as long as this area is binding, we're doing really good. But aesthetically, you want as many of these to adhere to the legs as possible. If there's a strong web there, you can go in and just lightly snip the fiber so that maybe we'll get a chance of them laying down onto the arm a little bit. And see, some of my embellishment fibers came down pretty low. There's a chance that we'll just cut them off later because they stretch down into the felted area of the arm, and chances are they won't really bind. So it's okay if you just want to take some of that off, but as you're felting, make sure to felt this join area where the arms meet the body. If you have a gentle touch, you can, touch the fiber directly rather than doing it through the plastic. You can also felt through the mesh, which is something that I've done for years. But you just want to have a gentle pressure so that you're coaxing the fibers together versus disturbing them with your hands. If you want to check on the progress of your felt and you're not sure, and I'll assure you right now we're still in the very early stages, but what you can do is you can go in and just touch any of the fibers directly, and if they move under your touch, well, you've got a ways to go, because we want the wool to bind with the embellishment fiber. So don't rush it, just take your time. You're making handmade felt, so just have fun with that. After hand rubbing each side for about 15 minutes, flipping it back and forth multiple times, it can be helpful to roll, and I'm mostly going to roll in this direction because I want it to shrink this way versus get shorter. So I'm happy for it to get more narrow, but I don't want it to get shorter. If you have a small dowel, you can roll this in the dowel. If you don't have a dowel, you can just use your bubble wrap and use that to roll your project up in. You just want it to stay round as you roll, and there's no reason to focus any effort on where the arms are. You just want to roll from the area where the arms meet the body up to the bulb of the head. Now, if it doesn't want to stay round, just roll it back tight and you can wrap it in your towel. That will hold it all together. After about 25, I'll just give it a quarter turn and do it some more. We rolled from this edge, so let's flip it over and roll from this edge. The rolling portion actually takes just a few minutes while still in the plastic. So roll it for 5 or 10 minutes in the plastic as demonstrated, and then let's remove the plastic and evaluate our progress. Let's have a little peek and see how our octopus is doing. Just by touching it and feeling the fibers, things are really starting to migrate and to stay into place. It's starting to feel more dense. The legs are starting to feel integrated with the bulb of the body, and we're coming along really quite nicely. So we've reached the soft felt stage, and now it's time for fulling. We're going to increase our rolling pressure and a little more agitation, let a little more water naturally come out of the project. And what we expect is the project's going to start to shrink up now and get smaller than the resist, and then we'll remove it and continue fulling. To make sure that you don't rough up your fibers too much or get them too furry with overhandling, you can still keep them in the plastic just to keep them as a barrier between your hands. And we can actually even remove this piece now, and that's going to give us a lot more mobility with rolling and rubbing the piece. So far, I've only rolled side to side. I do want to go ahead and rub some from the top down, but we favored the shrinkage in side to side already by starting there and concentrating there. So we'll just help get all the fibers to bind together with a little bit of agitation in this direction. Upon closer inspection here, what we can see is our project is actually starting to pucker and get a little bit wrinkly. And if we do a pinch test, we can feel that we're able to now pull up our fabric as one piece. And that's very important. It means we have a nice felt forming, and we can see also with every time we roll it, and we squeeze out a little bit of water, it's gonna kind of hold its shape and hold those wrinkles. So we know that we can remove our resist at this point. So just do a few tests and roll your piece up. Our resist is actually wanting to scoot out, and the piece is kind of wanting to hold its shape or hold that bow that we give it because it's shrinking smaller than the resist inside. Let's take out our resist. The fibers inside are not going to be quite as well felted as the fibers on the outside, and that's okay because we still have a ways to go now. We don't want a flat octopus. We want him to look round. So go ahead and change this shape and take what was flat and now make it the sides. We are going to continue hand felting the piece now. We're in the fulling stages by rolling primarily, and you can roll between your hands or on the bubble wrap. We also want to, if it seems like you have a line on what were the side edges, then now's a good time to rub it with soap. It's actually very small in there and may be difficult to get your hands inside, but you could probably get your fingers inside. So we want to train out those edges that we created by felting it flat and start to give it a nice rounded spherical shape, even if it's kind of like a light bulb, which is what I'm going for, a smaller neck area and a more bulbous top. If you want to shrink the neck area here, then pinch and roll that area. At this stage, it's a good idea to go around and just make sure that all of your arm areas are well felted. It's okay to add some extra soap. You can felt them inside and out. We're almost done now, so give your octopus that final look, go around all the areas and make sure it's nicely felted. You can also round out the arm joins here by just felting inside of them. And again, don't worry if some aren't binding exactly like you would have wanted. We'll fix that in the final stage. Our octopus is well felted. I'm very happy with his shape. Once you're happy with yours, take it to the sink, rinse out all of the soap, and then just drop it in a bowl of water with a splash of vinegar. That will help neutralize any residual soap that may be left and help bring the wool fibers back to their natural pH and natural sheen. Soak it for about 15 minutes while you clean up your workstation, and then we'll get to blocking and shaping our octopus to dry overnight. Once your octopus has been rinsed and soaked in its little vinegar bath, go ahead and squeeze excess water out in a dry towel. This stage is called blocking, so we'll be doing the final shaping of our octopus while we allow it to dry overnight. I like to stuff the body with quilt squares, and I just reuse these over and over. I like because they can be washed, unlike plastic bags, and they also help absorb water and wick it away from the piece. If you're using quilt squares that have been washed and dried before, they're really soft and they become very malleable, so you can fill all those areas just by stuffing it in. Oh, I want the head of my octopus. I like it to be just a little like rounded, but a little flat. So after you stuff it, you can pound it or squeeze it in whatever shape you want to kind of hold that shape as you allow it to dry overnight. If your neck wasn't quite as small as you wanted, and you're at this stage, what you could do is tie, with the neck stuffed fully, what you could do is tie a piece of fabric, something wide that's not going to leave a crease mark. You could tie it around it and cinch it down while it dries overnight, and that will help pull those fibers in. I'm pretty happy with mine, but that's just an idea. Now to shape the legs, I'm sharing just the way I would do it, and I think we're going to have a diagram from Helen and a way that she discovered to do it as well. You could use chopsticks, pencils, dowels, paintbrushes, whatever you have that is a good size to wrap the legs around. So I just have some long paintbrushes that are hanging around, and we're going to wrap the arms around the paintbrushes so that they spiral. And then I'm just going to rubber band the very end. And don't worry if this twists, we're going to bind that down in just a second. So do the next leg. And for no apparent reason, I wrap one this way and one that way. So I think I've seen some of Helen's octopuses, and the legs are so expressive and fun, and even sticking, out to the side. So have fun with however you create your legs. And they could even be a tighter curl if you use a smaller tool than mine. With each two legs, how I get it to hold the shape that I've put is that I get the legs twisted as tightly as I want them. And then I'm going to rubber band two paintbrushes together. That will hold those two in whatever configuration I just twisted them. That's how we're going to do it. So do that with all the arms and set it to dry overnight. This little octopus has been drying overnight. Its legs are fun and curly, and it's time to finish it off with some eyes and stuffing. We're going to be needle felting the eyes onto the face, whichever side you most like. I think I'm going to choose this side right here. And first we want to stuff the body. I'm going to use polyfill. You can also use wool if you desire. And if you find it difficult to needle felt your eyes in with the polyfill, you can stuff a little wool back there, but I'm just going to use 100% polyfill on mine. I love this stuff because it's really lightweight and it doesn't get lumpy. You can really stuff things full with it. The finished weight of the unstuffed octopus in this project weighs approximately 1.8 to 2 ounces, depending on how much fiber you use. I'm going to stuff the neck a little bit more, but we're going to seal off this area with a needle felted layer of fiber right there. And if you prefer, you can stuff yours entirely with core wool or other wool. Now, before you seal it off, you might want to make sure you like how your eyes adhere to the face. That way, if you don't love it, you can go back and add wool. Pick a small tuft of white, and then we're just going to ball it up and put it where we think they go, and I'll lightly tack it in a couple of pokes to get it where I want it. I will make about a thumb distance between the two eyes, and I'll put my second dome right about there. So we needle felted our eyes in little dome shapes right onto the face of our octopus. An alternate approach would be to needle felt a small bead and cut it in half. You can even build out to the pupil stage before attaching it to your octopus, and you could even build 2 half domes and put in the pupils in advance. Whatever works for you is totally fine. The shape of the pupils is described as a barbell shape. I'm going to pull off a small pinch of wool and just roll the center a little bit so I get kind of a cylinder going down the middle. And I'm going to try and just twirl the end around to make sort of the rounded shape at the end. Just get it going roundish. Now it's time to put a rim around the eyes. We're going to make ours gray and black. So the pieces should be about 2 inches long each. And then we're going to dry felt them, kind of like we did the little barbell shapes for the eyes. Let it be a little tapered at each end. And then we'll felt them together to wrap around the eye. So we'll start by just bringing them together. If you're having a difficult time rubbing, getting it to roll this way, make it go parallel with your fingers, and then the joins of your fingers will help roll it. And go ahead and build up some mass to it before applying it to your octopus. We have needle felted the eyes onto our octopus. They're well secured and in place, and now we're just going to seal him up and cover this little area of stuffing. Because the insides of my legs are all white, I'm going to go with a close match in color, and that is our core wool. You can use any fiber that kind of matches. And we're going to needle felt this down and secure it to the inner walls, if you will, of the bulb of the body. As you look around your octopus, if there's anywhere, especially where the arms meet the body, that you're not real happy with the join, take your fine felting needle and just tack the two together. If that doesn't quite work, if you have a really, bad spot, well, then you can try and patch it with a little bit of matching wool batting, such as MC1, Maori, or Bergschaft, whatever matches. But if you just have two little bits and you're just not in love with that join, try tacking them together with a fine or an ultra fine felting needle, and just smooth it out. The other option would be, if you wanted, you could trim the fibers a little bit. If it seemed a little hard, you could break that line with a snip of the scissors and anchor them down a little bit more. Honestly, I'm not worried about it. I love these fantasy octopuses. I feel like Helen has given us a real gift in this project, and I know that there's going to be a wild and fun variety of octopuses to marvel at in the very near future. We are all finished making our octopus, and mine is buddied up with the one that Helen made, and this project is so much fun. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you make one, please share it in our group, LivingFelt Friends on Facebook. Make sure to tag Helen as well and say thanks. And if you're just getting started and you want some help wet felting over resist, check out this next video right here.